area. I can tell you 7 minutes after that phone call, the Toronto Police Service had a male under arrest for, we believe, responsible for the mass casualty incident that took place. Detective Sergeant Graham Gibson from the Toronto Homicide Squad is here today. He will be able to give you an overview of the investigation and the status of it right now. Chief Coroner Dirk Hire is going to be here, and he'll also be able to provide some updates on other aspects of the investigation. But what I will speak to is the next steps with regards to the crime scene itself. Appreciating the fact that we're looking at approximately a kilometer strip of the busiest street in the country. It's an outdoor scene. There is a lot of evidence that needs to be gathered. However, we try to take every measure possible to expedite the processing of the scene without affecting or compromising the integrity of the investigation. In order to do that, we had to acquire the resources of specialized traffic reconstruction resources from other jurisdictions. I can tell you the GTA collectively called to pitch in, and we're grateful for that particular help that was asked. However, at the end of the day, we were able to utilize York Regional Police Service as well as Peel Regional Services to help assist with processing the scene as quick as possible. I'd also like to thank Commissioner Hawks and the Ontario Provincial Police for also providing special resources in helping look after the scene. I can tell you every effort is going to be made to continue to do what we can do to reduce the footprint that we have occupied at this point, and we are hoping by the end of the day to have that particular scene reduced. Now to speak on the actual investigation itself, Detective Sergeant Graham Gibson.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to update you on the investigation aspect of homicides 18 to 27 for this year. And with regard to the investigation, it is alleged that during the morning hours, as the Chief mentioned, of Monday, April 23rd, the accused, now known to be 25-year-old Alec Manassian, attended a Ryder truck rental facility just north of Toronto. He then proceeded to rent a panel-style van. Subsequent to that, he then made his way to the area of Finch and Yonge Street in Toronto, and this was around 1:30 p.m. As has been reported in the media, the accused is alleged to have posted a cryptic message on Facebook minutes before he began driving the rented van, and he drove it southbound on Yonge Street and onto the crowded sidewalks. He continued to drive southbound on Yonge Street, deliberately striking pedestrians on the sidewalk and roadway with the vehicle. The accused was arrested by a member of the Toronto Police Service in the area of Yonge and Shepherd Avenue. Once arrested, the accused was taken to 32 Division, and he was investigated by the Homicide Squad. He has been charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder, 13 counts of attempted murder, and we're anticipating a 14th count of attempted murder, which will be laid shortly following some follow-up investigation. The accused did appear in court today, this morning at 1000 Finch Avenue, and he's being held in custody. As you can imagine, the investigation is extremely detailed and ongoing. And because the accused has been charged, I'm restricted from discussing any evidence involved in the investigation, including any questions pertaining to motive. At this time, I'm going to appeal to members of the public and the business community in the affected area. If you have video of the incident or are a witness and you have not spoken to an investigator tonight or this morning or this afternoon, I'd ask you to reach out as soon as possible to the Homicide Squad or 32 Division to speak with an officer. The TPS has a portal on their homepage for members of the community to upload any video evidence they may have obtained along with their contact information, which can be put in as well. Investigators will be reaching out to witnesses and the surviving victims in the near future to follow up in the investigation. I'd like to thank everybody right now for their ongoing cooperation. Thank you.
So I'd like to start off and speak on behalf of the Death Investigation System in Ontario, and also with my colleagues and all of those others in law enforcement that have been working diligently throughout the night and all afternoon yesterday to express our heartfelt condolences to the families of those who have suffered terrible losses, for the tragic deaths, and the multiple victims who are also still injured and recovering. also to not only the families, but also the communities, the city, and everybody generally across Canada and broader. It's a horrible tragedy, and one that hopefully we'll never have to repeat. I'm here working, representing, as I say, the death investigation system, working to support the Toronto Police Service and others as we sort through this tragedy and try to gain an understanding of what's occurred over the past 24 hours, just over 24 hours. We always work together as a team with police investigators and also with coroners, forensic pathologists, and others to try to understand the circumstances. It really depends on the type of case as who will lead that case. In this case, given the fact that there are criminal charges and this is a criminal investigation, the police are leading most of the investigation. However, we have the responsibility for the examination of those who are deceased, and a key component of that is the identification of those peoples. There's a number of questions that are being raised about when are we going to release the names, who are the people that have died, and when can we learn more about them. I'm going to tell you today that we have not confirmed any of the identifications at this point, and we are working to do that work carefully. We clearly recognize and fully sympathize with the families, and we recognize the significance of those and their friends who are desperate to understand and to know the true identities of those who have died. I'll tell you, identifying the victims is our #1 priority. And last night, Detective Sergeant and I were working closely with others. There were 3 coroners that were present at the scene, and we were working closely with our forensic pathology colleagues to help to start that work. But we also have to ensure that we're completely accurate when we do this. So we're always balancing the need to know and the desire to know quickly to ensure that we have 100% accuracy, and that takes time. And that time can be very frustrating in situations. When we have tragedies of such multiple numbers and complexity, it's very challenging. It occurred in a very busy pedestrian area, and it occurred over a significant distance. And there were many who are injured as well as deceased, and we need to have a full understanding of both the injured as well as the deceased to truly understand who each of those peoples are to effectively provide information to those families. It's far different, for example, from somebody found in their house deceased. So why does it take so long? Most of the time people have identification on them, and that gives us the first information as to who that person may be. So from that information, we then reach out to family members, and we have done that. The police service have done that, working with us, and told the family that we believe their loved one has died. And we've asked them to help us to develop a method to scientifically confirm those identifications. And those confirmations will be through dental X-ray comparison, potentially fingerprint comparison, or if necessary, DNA comparison. So we are actively obtaining records. We have, as I say, notified families and told them that we believe, tentatively, that their loved ones have passed, but we've also provided great caution in that, and therefore we will not be releasing any of those names until we fully understand it. You know, people look different when they're deceased. Injuries occur, and we want to be very careful that we don't have any confusion with that. There's a team actively working right now, forensic pathologists, forensic anthropologists, coroners, dentists, and scientists all working together, as I say, to make a plan and to develop this. Having said that, I don't believe that we will be confirming names for certainly a number of days. And when we do, we will release those in a respectful way after the family are notified of the confirmation. So over the next number of days, we will be doing that work. We will also be doing full examinations to fully understand the injuries that occurred and to help inform family members, but also inform the criminal justice. So at this point, I will step over, and the mayor will take over.
Well, good afternoon. First and foremost, may I begin, as I have previously in speaking to this matter, to express once again my condolences on behalf of all of the people of the City of Toronto to the families of those who continue to suffer. Obviously, they have uncertainty added to the tragedy that happened yesterday, and many of the people in the surrounding areas have some of the same uncertainty. But I will say, in expressing our deep condolences and heartfelt sympathies, that both the Premier and myself have made inquiries of the officials and have been assured, and I am entirely satisfied, that every possible resource has been applied to the task that was just described to you, and that everything is being done as quickly as possible. And that includes the much less important matters, but nonetheless ones that I'm going to address, which have to do with the city and its state of affairs. The city itself, we're seeing what the city's made of today, and I think in terms of its sort of moral fiber and its spirit, people are showing the world our best, even on our darkest days. I think a visit to the memorial up at Yonge and Finch is something that is very moving, because there have been hundreds and hundreds of people who have been there, and they've joined in solidarity with all of those they don't know to express their heartfelt condolences as well. We're seeing a great deal of generosity of spirit, but we're also seeing generosity that people want to express in other ways in terms of providing some degree of support for the families that have been affected by this. People want to help. They want to do something. We've seen organizations start up fundraising campaigns, and one of the things we thought best for us to do at the city was to be in touch with the Toronto Foundation to try and bring a degree of coordination to this. So you had one well-known organization that has an organization in place to deal with precisely this kind of thing that could help us to in one place pull together the generous support that people wish to offer of a financial nature to support the families of those who've been killed or injured. And so the City of Toronto has partnered with the Toronto Foundation, and there will be initiated today a fund that is called #TorontoStrongFund. And this will ensure that donations can be put together in one place and then can flow to families and agencies and others in an orderly fashion, including victim services. The City and the Toronto Foundation have also been in communication with GoFundMe and the organization Canada Zakat. They have both very generously and kindly stepped forward to take some efforts, some preliminary efforts to assist families as well. And these are all important efforts, and I want to express on behalf of the City and the people of Toronto our thanks for people who have initiated that generosity. What we're now going to do is try to work with these groups to coordinate all of these efforts, and ideally to make sure that it is captured and coordinated in a fully accountable and transparent manner in one place, so that everybody knows exactly how things are being handled. So we're all working hard to respond to this as best that we can. In terms of other things, we're dealing here with a city that is in mourning, but we're strong and we're resilient, and we're, I think, showing the world how Toronto responds in times like these. And one of the challenges that has been in front of us has been to keep the city functioning. And we've had, I should tell you, extraordinary help. And I want to just underline again, as I have in previous times that I've spoken, the work that has been done by all of our first responders yesterday and today, and the work that continues to be done, of course, in the main by the Toronto Police Service, is something that was extraordinary to behold yesterday and continues to be extraordinary. And that, of course, not only extends to the work they're doing investigating, but also it includes the cooperation that the police chief and his men and women have shown to us in the context of trying to complete their work as soon as possible. And I should say I made it clear from my standpoint, while we want to get the city functioning normally, that I wanted to make sure he had every opportunity to do his work completely and properly and thoroughly, but obviously we wanted to get the city working. And I should say our city staff, together with staff from elsewhere, have also been very helpful in this regard. To that end, the North York Civic Centre will reopen tomorrow for business as usual, and we expect that to be the case, and that there should be nothing that should alter that. As you know, more than half of the affected area has already been opened to pedestrians and to traffic. The closure, the continued closure of part of the area is posing difficulty for many and is trying the patience of many, but I ask for people's continued understanding. As you heard the chief indicate, we expect that with all the work that is presently being done by the police service, by the TTC and by Canada Post in this area, that it should be done by the end of the day today. And so while we won't we won't make the afternoon rush hour as a time that we can reopen the roads and reopen normal subway operations, we expect that will in fact be the case by early evening today. And so that means that during the afternoon rush hour, it's likely that the TTC will continue to bypass the North York station and the section of of Yonge Street that is presently closed will remain closed, but by early evening we expect the full extent of Yonge Street to be reopened, and that the subway will then resume normal operations, including stopping at the North York Centre stop. And I will just say once again that in addition to the thanks the Chief offered to all of those from around the world who've been in touch with Toronto to offer their condolences and their sympathies, thank you. To the surrounding municipalities who've helped the police service and others with the task of doing all the work they have to do, thank you. And in particular to our own police service and to all of the people involved in this and all of the others involved in any way in emergency services, healthcare, the coroner's office, thank you, because they have done an extraordinary job, I can assure you, having had the chance to see a lot of it firsthand. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll open the floor to some questions. Can you repeat the question? Yes, there was a cell phone from the suspect that was in fact seized.
Detective Sergeant, can you talk a little bit about that time between when he allegedly rented this van and when the rampage allegedly started? Did he go straight from the rental place to Yonge and Finch, or are we talking about a matter of hours in between? And if so, have you been able to fill in that time?
As I stated, because it is an ongoing investigation, I can't get too detailed. I can say that it was a fairly short period of time, and we're working hard to fill in those gaps before the events that occurred.
You made a point of mentioning this Facebook post, which is something that we normally wouldn't necessarily hear, but is there a reason that you mentioned that, and is there something that you're reading into that?
No, we look at all aspects of what comes in an investigation. We take everything and we analyze it and investigate it. I knew for a fact that it was in the media. It was very prevalent on television yesterday and in the papers, so I'm not telling you anything that I think you yourselves and the public don't already know, and it's something that we'll take into account in this investigation throughout the coming weeks.
Thank you, Sergeant. I know you can't talk about motive, but the big question remains why. You did mention that Facebook post. Can you at least say if the suspect was frustrated with his relationships with women?
Again, because that's part of the evidence, that's going to be part of our investigation.
Is there any group that you're talking to in relation that he may have been affiliated with in connection to that cryptic post?
There's no group that we're speaking to. What we are doing is collecting all of the information that we can find. It's an ongoing process, and we will, over the coming weeks, investigate all of those aspects.
Can you explain to us the number of women who were in the victims? To give us a sense. I mean, looking at the list, the names seem to be predominantly female.
Yeah, that's fair to say, predominantly female.
Can you talk about age range?
Age range, it was anywhere between your mid-20s up to the area of 80s.
Any indication the suspect knew any of the victims?
There's no indication at this point in time.
His cell phone, was that the thing that was in his hand as he was being taken down?
We're going to have to examine video to ensure that, so I don't want to answer that conclusively until I've had a chance to view all that video. I'm sorry, you have to repeat the question? Yes, it's all in the same area, yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that the suspect is mentally ill?
That's something that would have to be explored, and it's far too early for me to make any comment on that right now.
Do you have anything to say about his possible obsession with the California killer, Elliot Rodger?
I don't have anything to say about that right now, except to say that it's something that over the coming weeks, and I'm repeating myself, it's something that we'll be looking into, certainly.
You talked about how there were 15 injuries. Today you mentioned that there's a 14th possible with follow-up investigation.
Yes.
If 15 people were injured, can you explain to us so we can help explain to the public why there wouldn't be perhaps a 15th also?
It was simply a matter of a miscount, and we were able to look further and deeper into all the evidence that we had at the hospitals. As you can imagine, it's very confusing, and it was just a miscount. And
So there were in fact,
it's accurate as of up to today, yes.
there were in fact only 14
Yes.
injured in this?
Yes.
Can you tell us about the extent of their injuries?
I can't speak to the exact nature. I do have an idea, and it ranges from scrapes and bruises to terrible injuries that I won't get into discussing here.
Can you tell us how many are out of hospital?
Sorry?
Can you tell us how many of the victims are out of hospital today?
I don't have an exact number of that. I do have investigators who are involved in tracking that, but I don't. To tell you, I know some have gone home, but to tell you an exact number, I'd be guessing.
How close are police to understanding the route he took? We've heard he was, are you mapping that together? How close are we to understanding exactly where the victims are and how that all went?
That's being done. It's a part of the process of us going through the crime scene, and we had the experts come from Hit and Run, as the chief spoke of, from our service and other assisting services, in conjunction with forensic identification services. It's going to take a bit of time to make sure that we've got the proper route, but we're still working on that.
Can you talk about the state of the deceased in terms of how difficult it is to identify? It might be a better question for Dr. Meyer, but is it more just what happened with Humboldt that you guys are being careful, or does it say something about the state of the deceased when they were found?
I believe the doctor would speak to that.
So in Ontario and generally in death investigation, when there's a complex incident like this, because of the severity of the injuries, which I'm not going to specifically comment upon because I haven't had an opportunity to directly examine all of the deceased persons, but with that complexity also because of the number, we always take an approach that we will use a scientific method to confirm the identifications to prevent any confusion that may arise. If you think about visual, it's visual confirmation. So usually when we're doing a visual confirmation of an identity, we usually have strong belief that that's who the person is, and in fact the visual isn't really an identification, it's a confirmation. And with many people who die within a complex situation such as this, and many who are injured, we are very careful, and therefore we use a scientific method so that there won't be potential confusion.
Dr. Hyder, any difference because of what happened in Humboldt to make sure are you following the usual protocols?
This is our protocol. This is the process. This is the process that we take in a complex fatality. That's something we feel strongly about. We've talked about this through planning and discussions, and this is the best practice that we feel strongly with. It's very challenging, though, I will say, because there are many in the public, many in the community, many families who want us to confirm, and we're very careful about that.
Discrepancy from the length of time that it takes to do follow that protocol compared to the usual way.
Well, the usual way really is case by case. So there are many cases that we would be using scientific confirmation in other situations of death. So for us, a visual confirmation would be based upon a number of circumstances and factors: the house they may be living in, the ID they may have, when they were last seen, who they were with. All those sorts of things may make visual confirmation much more straightforward, as opposed to a pedestrian who's walking in a portion of Toronto and it's unknown, walking by themselves, and they are struck. So you can imagine there's significant complexities, and the factors that would allow us to have a more specific idea of who it is would be limited.
Are a majority of the victims women, or a majority of the deceased victims women? That was said earlier.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that because I don't have all of that sorted through until we have confirmation.
Are there extra resources being brought in at the coroner's office with the Bruce McArthur investigation, this van attack? Can the coroner's office keep up?
Yeah, it's the death investigation system. So we're coroners and forensic pathologists and other forensic experts. We have plans for complexity situations such as this, and we've mobilized that plan, and we feel confident that we are moving in the most effective way. We have a plan in place on how to do these examinations. We brought in extra people last night. We have capacity, and we feel confident that we have a plan that will allow us to move in the most time-efficient way. Frankly, it takes time to get records, and it takes time to meet families, and so that's not a resource issue. That's really, you need to ensure that you're talking to the right person. You take the time to do that, and obviously people are grieving. Then we need to achieve finding those records, which may be challenging, and then those records need to be compared effectively. So we don't want to rush this, and it's not because we're limited in numbers. It's because we want to take the most appropriate time to ensure that we give the best answers possible.
In terms of the timeline, how many are injured exactly?
Because there may be international families at play in this case?
Yeah, there were a number of complexities in reaching the families and reaching through friends and other ways. The Toronto Police Service did an admirable job. We worked together to think of a strategy and to try to provide the information as quickly as possible to the families. I have to really take my hat off to the Toronto Police Service, who did an admirable job in both with the injured as well as the deceased persons.
Timeline. Yesterday, I think we were told 26 minutes between the beginning and the arrest. 7 minutes is what we're told today. Is this just a matter, and sorry, this is probably a question for the detective sergeant or the chief, is it 7 minutes from when the first person was struck to when Mr. Manassian was under arrest? Detective sergeant? Or the chief, whoever wants to.
I'll do it. To be honest with you, I don't have an exact timeline. It's something we're still working on. When we do have a better idea and we've had the chance to go through the video footage, I'll have a better idea, and that's something that we're still doing right now.
26 minutes, when we were told that last night, like that's a long time for it to be going on. So there's a big difference between that and saying it was over in less than 10 minutes. Could we say less?
Yeah, I would say it was closer to the 10-minute.
Yeah, thank you. So the information that I have, it is from the first call to the moment of arrest. And I'm told, and I've been told more than on one occasion, that that was a 7-minute gap.
Chief, you talked about the officer who made the arrest. A lot of people have been amazed by that video. Do you think your officer showed remarkable restraint, or was he showing remarkable training?
Well, I mean, it's a combination of both. I mean, as an organization, one of the aspects of policing in today's environment with all of the urban cities across Canada is that we find that more of our calls for service involve a lot of aspects that require more de-escalation. We've added a third day within our organization that's specific to de-escalation and dealing with not just community interactions, but also dealing with the de-escalation piece. Our training at the police college as well speaks to de-escalation. More people will be dealing with de-escalation than pulling out their firearms in most police agencies in Toronto. And so it is a focal point of our training piece. Having said that, that particular situation yesterday, the way in which it went down was nothing short of remarkable.
Did he see it with a cell phone?
Well, that's going to be evidence, and I believe Detective Sergeant Gibson wants to put a hold on drilling into the minutiae of it. I've had a very brief opportunity to speak with him. He's doing well. He's very thankful for all of the support. He basically expresses he defaulted to his training under the circumstance, and we're doing anything and everything to make sure that his well-being is looked after.
When you talk about enhanced security around the city, there's the Jays game tonight. Has anything been beefed up security-wise?
Well, from a community safety perspective, we have put our officers on 12-hour shifts at this point in time with a couple of overlaps to look at ensuring that we have the most amount of officers where they need to be and why they need to be there based on threat assessments, based on information we receive from Intel and any other aspects, and ensuring that the City of Toronto is in fact safe. We have nothing that suggests that there needs to be any more concern from a safety perspective, but having said that, I don't want to remain overly comfortable on that. Our officers are highly trained to make sure that we've heightened our awareness and to be making sure that we are communicating with the communities that we are policing right now. And we've changed our deployment with what calls we are going to. And the investigation takes priority right now, and we're going to take every step to make sure the investigative piece is looked after to its fulsomeness, as well as we continue our day-to-day process of being where we need to be at all times. Wendy? No, that has changed. We are scaling down, but we also are making sure that all of the priority calls are looked after in a very timely fashion, and then we will take the next steps of building down from that, which is what we're doing right now. Wendy?
Can you speak to resources? You hear this is a third high-profile homicide investigation that Toronto Police have taken on in a number of months. Are your officers stretched? Do you have enough resources to deal with it?
Well, as you can see yesterday, everybody steps up to the plate in time of need, not just the law enforcement, but also members of the community. It really does define the City of Toronto as a whole. This is a particular situation where we have quite a lot of resources to help at the front-loading end of it, and we have an opportunity to hold this particular crime scene so that we can really dig down and make sure that we have everything that's necessary for this particular investigation. Resource-wise, I'm very comfortable with where we stand right now.
Can you talk about the race against the rain? I mean,
No, that was not said. That's very incorrect. As a homicide investigator, and Graham is very highly trained, all doors are open. Everything will be explored. You guys are looking at one particular aspect of the investigation, but I can tell you from his seat, there are going to be many more layers. There are a lot of judicial authorizations. There's a lot more video evidence that has to come in. There are a lot more witnesses, which is why we have the hotline up there. We've got tremendous support right now from the community. The one thing that I missed yesterday, because I just landed here and I didn't really fully appreciate what many citizens had to witness, the casualties that they were witnessing, just being there at that time and seeing that. I want to make sure that everybody has an understanding that we do have that hotline to help people that are in need, or if you know somebody that, I don't want anyone to feel like there is nowhere to go. And so that hotline will provide a starting point for those people that will need that help. And we've also looked after our members of the service, not just our frontline folks, our communications operators, our call takers, anyone that had a touch point with this. It's important that we do everything that we can from a wellness perspective as well.
Is it possible you could file some sort of terrorism or hate crime charges then based on this Facebook post?
I've said that all the lanes are open with this investigation.
Question for you.
Detective Sergeant.
You charged him with premeditated murder in each one of these cases, which implies deliberate. He was going after these people. We're hearing a predominant number of the people killed or injured were women. Do you have any evidence you're pursuing the fact that he was bypassing men and targeting women? Because one of the witnesses said, you watched him, he was very deliberately driving. Do you have evidence he was deliberately targeting more women than men?
No, at this stage, we have no evidence of that occurring. As you can imagine, we had to focus yesterday on our victims and the people who were injured, our scene, and gathering as much evidence as we could at the time. All that has taken an inordinate amount of time. Last night, all through the night, everybody worked, including this morning. All of those things have to be looked at, and it's going to be over the coming weeks. So there's no way I can make a general sweeping statement based on that kind of information.
Can you talk about the rain for just a second? I mean, it's about to come this evening, and I know Peel and York were saying how big of an issue that is for the reconstruction and doing all the examination and investigation that they need to do. So how big of a concern is that race against the rain for you and your officers right now?
It's not a concern of ours right now.
A couple more questions.
You guys are waiting, from what I understand, for a warrant to get into the accused home. Can you just speak to what sort of things you'll be looking for in there? The chief mentioned judicial authorizations, that sort of thing. Talk about that after the
Over the coming days and weeks, I imagine there'll be a number of judicial authorizations, including production orders, and I'm not going to be discussing any of the evidence that we'll be searching for. Just the fact that, as you are aware, it will be being done, as it is in most homicide investigations.
Have you gotten into the house yet?
I won't be commenting on that right now.
Chief Saunders, just quickly on the de-escalation, are police taught to deal differently with someone who's asking them to shoot, who's asking to be shot? Witnesses heard him saying, shoot me, shoot me.
Well, there are a couple of aspects to that, and the most direct answer is yes. We are taught de-escalation and its importance of looking at the situation. All aspects of policing, when you look at our touch points, when it comes to use of force, when we make our 27,000 plus arrests in a year, our use of force is less than 0.5%. So taking that into consideration, we are trained to use as little force in any circumstance. But the other factor on top of the training is providing the proper tools that are necessary for the officers to have the opportunity to try to use as least amount of force as possible. So by the introduction of the board having us to have an opportunity of expanding on the conductive energy weapons, we will have all of our frontline officers being readily equipped with that tool that will have a tremendous benefit, I think, on reducing loss of life and reducing harm.
But does someone asking to be shot change the way that a police officer interacts with you? Is that
There's no cookie cut. You have to look at the situation. What are the issues? What's the proximity, mindset, level of violence within that situation, backdrop? What's the environment behind the particular person? So there are a lot of moving parts that we incorporate within our training, and of course, at all costs, we are looking at the reduction or loss of life as a method of resolution.
Any special qualities, Chief, that agent has? Because you've got two different cases, Sammy Porcio on the one hand, James Porcio, I'm sorry, on the one hand, and this agent on the other hand. Same training, unless you tell us otherwise, same training, different outcome.
Well, I don't have the luxury of doing comparatives. What I'm doing is I'm dealing with the moment that we have at hand, and right now at hand we had a mass casualty incident, and as a result of that, we were able to successfully apprehend the person we believe responsible for that, and on the go forward, we are going to take the necessary steps.
Any special qualities that you were able to discern by meeting with your agent that might help explain on top of this training?
It's, as I stated, our officer defaulted to his training, and as a result, we've got successful outcomes.
Chief, has the suspect made any statements at all to you, and have you guys ruled out any accomplices?
Detective Sergeant Gibson is looking into all of those aspects. As I stated earlier, we will investigate to the fullest, and whatever we can obtain, we will obtain, and we'll push it towards the court system. Thank you.
Can you talk about how you felt when you got the news?
Thank you. Sorry.
I'll talk quickly on that. Yeah, I can definitely do that. I was out of the country at the time, and obviously my first issue was the loss of life, and to the families that, having been in homicide, people can't really appreciate the fact that we have a lot of live victims, and this is a toll that will last forever. The magnitude of of where this occurred is something that also had a concern. The well-being of my officers and also the civilians at the front end taking the calls in and having to deal with it, knowing that there'll be abundance of calls of people who were not there to witness people dying, and we being the first point of contact, and understanding, appreciating the impact it has on our civilians as well. Toronto is an urban city. It's the fourth largest in the North American continent. I can appreciate when we look at the world map and the scope of things that are happening, that it is a reality. We are policing in a difficult environment, and the ability of having the properly trained people in place at the right time to do the right things becomes very important for us. Looking at lessons learned on the go forward, how can we as an organization benefit from this? How can we educate and update the public in a timely fashion so that we can all take a part in that community safety perspective? And also looking at it globally to look for commonalities and look for, when we start debriefing, what can we do better? Are there things that opportunities for part in that community safety perspective? And also looking at it globally to look for commonalities and look for, when we start debriefing, what can we do better? Are there things that opportunities for us to grow and enhance and make sure that we provide the best product that we can as law enforcement for the great city of Toronto?
So anybody can call that victim services hotline, right? Somebody that witnessed it, and that's different from this one we're seeing up here. It was a different hotline, right?
Yes, and we'll provide that particular hotline. It's important that we as a city as a whole, community safety is not just a matter of saving lives, it's also a matter of well-being. We have partners, we've got victim services and other people that are stepping up to the plate to assist us. It is for free. It is a service that will be provided for free. There is no cost to it. And I don't want people walking away thinking, I need help, but I can't afford it, or I need help, but I wasn't part of this investigation. Or if you have a friend that may have witnessed it but has nowhere to go, if that friend can contact that person and at least start a process, it would be of great benefit to us as a whole, as a community. So,
Chief, before you go, can you just confirm how many people were injured?
I'll let Detective Sergeant Gibson answer that.
As I previously stated, 14.
Any foreign consulate or embassy make inquiry about the victims?
Yeah, we do have at least the Korean so far, and there's others that we're dealing with, but it's just a matter of us being able to have the time this afternoon to get back to me. So it's ongoing.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes today's conference.